Good afternoon and a warm welcome to our Zoom panel at the Lucas Film Festival for Young Film Lovers here in Frankfurt, and a special hello to my guests of today's panel from 4 countries, France, Spain, Belgium and Germany. Together we want to talk today about the question, how can we spread our love for documentaries to young people? The French filmmaker, cinephile and theorist Alain Bacalard wrote a very influential book on film education, Hypothèse Cinema, teaching cinema in the classroom and beyond. And one central thing in this text is for me the figure of the passeur, a person who is passionate about certain films and is able to spread this love. And this makes it possible to lead young people across borders and get them excited about art. So let's start with the first round where I briefly introduce my guests and we talk about how documentary film came into their lives and why it plays such a big role. And I have to say, if somebody in the audience has a question, just put it in the chat or take a hand like this or whatever, and please feel free to interrupt me because otherwise it will be boring, I guess. So I'm happy if you just pose your questions. So I start with Sabine. Sabine, hello from Paris.
Hi.
Hello. She is the Delegate General of Documentaire sur grand écran. My French is not good, but it's an association which for 30 years has been supporting the return of doc films to the cinema throughout France. And key here is networking, but also a rigorous selection of films, lots of activities. And your catalog has 50 films, new ones, but also heritage. And sometimes you also program that together. That's an approach I really love. And your association favors the discovery of new talents, unreleased films, and independent productions. Sabine, you wrote me, when you discovered docs, it was a shock. Can you tell me a bit more about it?
Yeah. I think when I really discovered documentary cinema as a film and not as TV program or just a document from which you can learn a lot of things on the subject, but really a film, like an artistic point of view of a filmmaker. I think I was 20 years old. So it was quite late because I already loved cinema and I studied cinema in high school, but it was, I always heard about fiction films and I discovered that with in some films, filmmakers can talk about people that really looks like me and like people around me, and that they can tell me a story about these people. And I was really impressed.
And you are still, I guess. And for your work, the big screen, the dispositif cinema is very important. Can you elaborate a bit more on this?
Yeah, so the name of the association is Documentaire sur grand écran, which means documentary on big screen. And it was created 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, there was really few documentary films on theaters. So the association was created to put some documentary films on big screens in theaters, as it is for fiction films.
Okay, thank you so much, Sabine. We will get into more details also how you work together with a young audience, hopefully later. I come to Isabelle Mignot. You come from the field of production and distribution, and 2020 you started to develop the project Learning by Docs in Barcelona. And it's a platform, if I'm right, where teachers, schools and universities can subscribe and find documentaries and resources. What role does docs play in your life, Isabelle?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Tine. Well, documentaries are something that has also impressed me a lot, as Sabine said, is that the capacity that we have to move the world with documentaries. I think that's something that sometimes we're not conscious enough, but you know that trying to show different realities, trying to share what happens in the world is a way to connect us, and a way to change things and move things, to be like a lever. I think a lever, you say, to you know, to do other things. And that's something that's really so thrilling and so exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. And your starting point is not so much in your project, not so much the film itself, which is very often the case in aesthetic education. And also the cinema as space is less important as far as I understood. You came more from the idea of introducing knowledge to the education system. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, this comes from, well, you know, as you know, Docs Barcelona is a festival that has a section that's called Docs and Teens, where all the youngsters are able to, you know, to screen films, and, you know, there is a debate, there is between students and professionals. And we took notice that most of the sessions that we were preparing, all the students were like raising hands, asking questions, and, you know, and knowing. So I said, listen, that's something, you know, when you approach documentaries to youngsters, they react, they are interested, they want to know more, you know. So that was one of the things that's starting to move us. And we said, let's put together education and documentary. And that's what, you know, next is the new platform is trying to do what we are developing right now. And what we want is to be an educational resource, a support for teachers that can complement their teaching through documentaries, with short segments of documentaries that can take you afterwards to the whole film. You know,
okay, so we just shared some of your pictures. Maybe you would like to tell us a bit about it?
Well, yes, this is just we have some partners in the project already. We have the German partners, it's Docfest Munich, and in Greece, the Thessaloniki Film Festival. And we made a presentation last September 30th with all the schools, you know, it was the kickoff of the platform in the 3 countries. Mm-hmm. And that's the presentation. And I thought that it was interesting to see, you know, youngsters from different countries getting together through something that they have in common, which is the interest in documentaries and the interest in learning, basically.
Do you have any feedback from the youngsters? I mean, at least they have the chance with your project to discover documentaries much earlier than Sabine. So because they are already confronted, or they got the chance to discover them in school. But did you also get some feedback that they go to cinema afterwards?
Well, in fact, this is something we've just started, so it's just it's very difficult to say right now. I hope to be able to give you some more information in a few months. But the only thing that I can tell you is in the last edition of Docs and Teens, we had an increase of 50% of schools that came in to see the session because of learning by dogs.
You build up a network with schools, and then they come to the festival as well.
Oh, that's an important, I think that's it. That's interesting to know, and we'll see how it gets.
Thank you so much, Isabel.
Thank
you. Gert Hermans, you are working for JEF, the Belgian contact point for everyone involved in youth, film, and new media. I learned from the website. And you are also active as content and communication officer for Ekfa, for the European Association of Children Film Festival. And at the moment you are not in Antwerpen, but in Frankfurt, because you're a jury member of Lucas. And I understood that the importance of docs in your life came a bit in a certain phase of your career. Do you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, you sound like a psychotherapist now, a phase in my career. Yes, I want to tell you about it, even if it's a very egocentric point of view. There was indeed, I have been working all my life in children's film industry, and a lot was about distribution and sales and production. And at a certain point I was a bit fed up with seeing always the same topics addressed in fictional films from around Europe. I wouldn't call it to keep it on the psychotherapist side. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but like a mid-professional crisis.
I did not want to go in this too deep. You know, it was just...
It was a mid-professional crisis. Yeah, I've seen it once too much. And then at that moment, we had a very interesting symposium in Cologne in 2014, organized by the German Dokumentarfilme Initiativen and Ekfa, where all of a sudden I was introduced to the world of young audience documentaries. And then we discovered that our neighboring country in the north, in the Netherlands, they had such a fantastic quality level of young audience documentaries through the Dutch Kids and Docs program. Then I went to a festival called Docs in Duisburg, in Ruhrgebiet. And I discovered what you can do with documentaries and how you can influence your audience or work with your audience on a very different level than we always had this tradition in fiction cinema. So then I really found a new space to breathe with cinema, and docs opened, or the documentary genre opened a new level for me to work with. And the direct result was that in Europe with Ekfa, we implemented the Ekfa Doc Award. So that's awards in different festivals that should, by the end of the year, result in the election of the best young audience documentary of the year, voted by the 150 Ekfa members that we have. And on a Belgian level, I realized that we had no tradition at all in Belgium in terms of producing young audience documentaries. So we started lobbying intensively, and we booked a result about which I will probably have the chance to tell a bit later.
Exactly, that's my next question. You are active with Cat and Dog, a concept which includes training a young focus group into production of docs for a young audience. And maybe you would like to tell us a bit of your experience with this focus group?
That's a very specific part of the Cat and Dog project that we have. So the Cat and Dog project is based on the Kids and Dogs. Even the title almost sounds the same. So it's a production trajectory where we have 5 documentaries made per year. But you want me to tell me specific? You want to tell?
No, please go ahead and let us know what Cat and Dog is, and then how the focus group is connected. Yeah.
So Cat and Dog was a way to launch the tradition of young audience documentaries in Flanders. We found a partnership with the VAF, the Flemish Film Fund, so the national funders, and with Getnet, which is the public broadcaster's youth channel. And the result is that we now have in Belgium or in Flanders a guaranteed production of 5 titles per year, plus a training trajectory for directors. So this trajectory means that the Flemish Institute has training sessions with young directors. We have pitching sessions. A number of projects are elected or are selected. And then after 1 year, we have a guaranteed production of 5 new young audience documentaries per year. We're now in the middle of the 3rd edition. Every year so far, we had 5 projects. Considering the fact that we started with nothing, we will soon have 15 documentaries, which we think is a great achievement. And also, I can feel it among directors that this thing that they never heard about before all of a sudden became an interesting option. We are partnering in a script lab called the Kids Kino Lab, where young directors can apply to work on their script. The Belgian the Belgian entries this year, 2 of them were documentaries, the only documentaries in the whole industry project. So one way or another, it got in the minds of young directors that documentaries for young audiences could be an interesting option. And then one of the things that we do in this project, that's the focus group. That's where you wanted me to get.
Yes.
It means that when those 5 documentaries are almost finished, we show them to a focus group of, let's say, 10 or 15 kids. I'm moderating the debate with them. The director is somewhere in the back listening and taking notes. And we try to find out, it's a rough cut, and we try to find out what works for them and not. And sometimes we can make small changes, or we can do something to, for instance, we had a documentary where there was only 3 seconds of a kid driving. It was about a circus family, and the kid was parking the trailer of the circus. In the conversation afterwards, it turned out that what intrigued them the most was this kid really driving a trailer? Is it allowed? No, it's not allowed, but he was doing it, really. So in the final result, you don't see 3 seconds, but you see 12 seconds of a kid driving a trailer. That's only a very superficial example, but sometimes it goes way deeper. We test with them how much, like for instance, this year we had a film about kids going on a camp. We call it a morning camp, where they go to, all the kids in the camp have lost a beloved person. Most of the time it's their mother or father. And then we measure very carefully with the panel, like, we give you this, is it enough? Do you want to have more? Do you think it would be too emotional if we give you more? So it's about all these small details or bigger issues that directors often don't think about, of asking kids themselves. So we help them asking questions to the kids, and they take the answers with them in the last phase of the production stage and make small adjustments to their project to better serve the needs of the young audience.
Yeah, thank you, Gert. I think beside passion, Pasteur has passion. Beside passion, I think participation is quite a key word if you work with a young audience. And we are here, so to say, in the framework of Lucas. And Lucas, of course, has this very old tradition of having mixed juries, as you know, Gert, you just experienced it, like experts, adults, but on eye level with young participants in the jury. So I think listening to the young audience is definitely always a very good thing. But maybe let me ask a bit of a provocative question. Do you think it's necessary to produce, especially for young audience? What is, I mean, you know what I mean? Is it another position could be, and I think sometimes I see this more in France, that everything what is produced is interesting for a young audience. Maybe you can talk a bit about it.
Well, let's say that in this particular case of the Cat and Dog project, of course, we work with, it's based on the Kids and Dogs scheme from Holland, and there a very, very vital partner is the broadcaster. Mm-hmm. So we need to take in consideration the needs of the broadcaster. Mm-hmm. If there is no guarantee from our public broadcaster that these films will be screened on TV, then well, probably it won't be possible to even find them an audience.
Yes.
So the broadcaster comes with a certain format, which is 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Of course, the topic could be whatever, but we truly appreciate. I think it would be better to turn the question around. Mm-hmm. Kids do have the right to see themselves represented on screen. And of course, we can make documentaries about other subjects, but mm-hmm. It's so great that in Belgium, where we never, ever, a young audience documentary was produced, finally kids see their own stories reflected mm-hmm. on screen. And yes, it would be great if adults could watch with them over their shoulder and watch through the eyes of children. But even if we could make a documentary interesting enough for kids about whatever possible subject, we insist on using the occasion of looking through the eyes of children and portraying a world that is theirs and that we feel privileged to be a part of that world. And I think that's that's a more interesting approach than children feeling privileged about having the chance to enter the world of adults.
With the focus group, also the editors are in contact of the broadcaster. Yeah. I think that's also really good, because very often adults underestimate what's interesting for a young audience. So that's
exactly. This is what it's all about, and this is the reaction. And all of us who have been working in this field have heard this reaction many times before. Oh, we're so surprised about what the kids understood and how much they picked up. Yeah. It has become almost a cliche, but it's too beautiful to be a bit.
Yeah, but there is still work to do. There is still work to do. Thank you so much, Gert. Last but not least, my German guest, Judith Funke from Cologne, and we already heard from Gert something about North Rhine-Westphalia, so that's a good bridge. Judith, you have headed the regional documentary film initiative at Filmbüro North Rhine-Westphalia since 2020, and you work as a freelance film educator and curator. And you are also the co-initiator of the doc film education project Reality Bites since 2017. How docs came into your life?
Well, I have to say that I haven't really focused on documentary per se for such a long time. I started off studying film and television studies back then in Bochum. And there was a students' festival, good old video festival that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, fell victim to the university reforms a few years after I was done. And there I had the chance to have like a very informal, very open setting for discovering various genres of film. And I think what really stays in my work up to this point is to try to come back to this situation where you look at something, some form of short film, long film, whatever genre, and you don't really know what to expect. You're curious, you're open, and you're not so much or trying to get away from this question of, is this true? Is it real? Is it fake news? Is it like putting it in a box? But more openly trying to discover what am I looking at? Why is it like this? Why is it different from things I'm used to? Why do I dislike that? Or why do I like that? And like opening up to these questions. And that's something that's really, really hard, and I think getting harder to reach today, but also very rewarding once you get there. Yes. In a group process, especially.
I definitely agree, of course. Would you like to introduce us a bit more what Reality Bites is exactly?
Yes, Reality Bites is a program I initiated together with my dear colleague Vera Schöpfer. We met in Dortmund when I was in charge of the cinema space in the Dortmunder U, and she was in charge of the film education section, and she was making documentaries with young people, and I was making cinema program and wondering where the young people were. And so we decided to make a project together and ask young people why they wouldn't go to the cinema and what they would like to see there. So these people she was working with already, they were focused on documentary and they were curious to see more professionally produced documentaries. So we made a selection and showed them some films that we appreciated and checked what they thought of them, and gave them the opportunity to select films for a public screening. And then we kind of coached them and had a group process to prepare the film talks, and had the group select who would do the moderation, and then had 3 screenings with moderated talks done in the group with a wider audience present. And that's the concept we are following through until now in various group constellations. We're doing it in universities, we're doing it in schools. We've also done one round with older people, like 60 plus audience, also back in Dortmund. And
it's
yeah,
happening
so
in Bochum, Köln, and Wuppertal, as far as I understood. So in 3 cities.
Yes, we've had 5 cities when we were
even.
most active. Now we also have Vera's doing the film house, and I took over the Dokumentarfilme Initiative from my predecessor. So we kind of scaled it down a bit. This year we are only doing Cologne, but yeah, very open to reconnecting with the other locations.
What I really like is its participation, which is also at Lucas very interesting, and a lot of we also have some programmers here and so on. But it's not in a framework of a festival, but you really have like the regular cinema program. So I thought that was really a very interesting decision. And you also, when I asked to send some photos, you sent one photo, so maybe we can now share it. You had 2 photos, but we have one first and then the other one. And it's this film you selected. It's Island of the Hungry Ghosts, from 2018 from Gabriel Brady. Maybe you would like to talk a bit about it?
Yes, well, maybe when you asked to send a photo, you expected a photo with me in it or young people in it.
No.
You are
perfect.
crabs in the photo. It's a film about following a therapist who works with refugees in like a prison-like camp that's hidden away on this island, Christmas Island, and that's the island where the spectacular crab migration takes place. And I chose the picture because this film, when I first saw it in the cinema outside of the context of Reality Bites, I found that it really brings together so much of what I care about in documentaries, because it brings together an artistic sensitivity, but also political dimension and emotional engagement in a way. So the film cannot really be reduced to a simple topic, what often happens to documentaries in educational contexts, I think. And so it's really an impressive cinematic experience that goes so much beyond what we are used to and talk about a lot in journalism or when it comes to like transfer of information. And the poetic cinematic dimension of that film
documentary
is so very strong.
Of art. Yes. So can you share the other photos? So and you sent this. So
yes, and that's actually that first screening I just talked about. So these are Sarah and Anna from our very first group talking to Özaslan, the director of the film Delilah, which is the first one they selected in the process.
So,
and yeah.
So if I ask you, Judith, when would you say the effort you took in this project is fruitful, or when would you say what we do is a positive result, and which factors you would tell which are important?
Well, for me personally, it's already rewarding just going through the group process. When I do the courses myself, I don't always do the courses myself, but that's already in itself I mean, I learn a lot. They also sometimes learn something, and it's very rewarding, I think. But then, of course, we have the public events that stand sort of as the end of like the final moment of the project, where usually you can tell whether something has worked out or not. The feedback we get from filmmakers and also from members of the audience that haven't been part of the process is that the film talks are like go very deep, because of course the participants usually have seen the film at least twice, have discussed it a lot, so they really go into depth. and filmmakers and the audience really appreciate that. It's really hard to put down in numbers, I think, because the quality of the screenings usually has not so much to do with how many people are present, and a full cinema space can also be intimidating, of course. So sometimes it's even for the quality of what happens socially, it can even be an advantage when it's not so crowded. So it's, I think numbers are not a very good tool to estimate or to evaluate success. And then there's also hidden successes that we sometimes discover by chance and are still working on, like how to get through to them. For example, one of the girls in the picture here, she, oh no, don't worry. We asked her to write us a little bit, write down her experience after the process. And she mentioned one film that wasn't selected. And I thought after the discussion we had, I thought, okay, they didn't like the film so much. Maybe it wasn't the right pre-selection. I kind of reconsidered for a future time, like whether I would pick this film again. And she wrote that although they hadn't selected the film, it sort of stuck with her for a long time. She discussed it with a lot of people, and I would never have known. And so, you know, that makes me think that a lot is going on with these people and what they've seen that I wouldn't even know about. And it's, yeah, it can be really rewarding to ask for it and also ask the quieter people who don't tell you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Some things like this also happened here in our everyday work, and I think that's the most rewarding moments. I don't know if you would agree, but for me here at the DFF in the film education department, it's always so important that you have the possibility to build up relationships also, that you don't, I mean, you meet very often, you know, in certain formats in film education all over Europe, you have a class, I don't know, for 1.5 hours or something, and that's it. But if you, I mean, Isabel was talking about changing the world, and of course, I think somehow many people in film education or in cinephiles want to change the world in a certain way. But I think in film education, it's necessary to build up relationships in the group, but also between the educators and the young people. Only then something really fundamental can happen or change in a way. But of course, also if you are only one time in the cinema and you discover a film, nobody will know maybe that a lot of things change. But in the film education process, I think it's very rewarding for both sides if you have the time to meet again and to build up relationships. And you also, Judith, I think we talked about it in the framework of our working group in the Hauptverband der Cinephilie for film education. You also can, the way young audience is starting to talk about cinema, it changes over time and it's more precise, it's different. The whole language develops in a way. So it's something I personally think we should go for, to try to have, you know, formats which allows us to meet more often and to go in depth, and to also, of course, for me, the cinema space, as you also described it, is somehow crucial. So I think for me that would be maybe some of the factors I would also add to what you said. Somehow I don't get any questions in my chat, so maybe are there any questions? I invite you again, because now all my guests are presented and introduced with the projects. Are there any questions? Okay. At least I can't see any. So Gert, you also brought some pictures, and you brought 2 pictures, and I already told you we did not selected one, but we put them side by side because I think it's a quite interesting choice. Would you like to tell us a bit why? Oh, now we need to move a bit. I don't know if you have the people on the right side, you will not see what the girl is doing. So maybe you should put it aside. Would you like to talk a bit on your choice of photos?
Yeah, when you asked me to select a question, I was very much in doubt because the one on the left side with well, at least my left side, the girls embracing each other is a picture from that morning camp. And it's a picture, for me, this picture was very much defining like the involvement of the directors. This is the highlight of the camp, the evening where the kids go. It's called the light parade, and they make a little boat for the beloved person that has died, and they send the boat on the water. And it's a very emotional moment. So I asked the filmmakers, like, how did you participate in this moment? Were you like the fly on the wall, or and that was the start of a very interesting discussion where they told me about how involved they were. So that was one extreme. But the one on the right this year for me was a very meaningful picture because it helped us to reach what I was hoping for the most, which is a certain debate, a dialogue between different parties involved. As at a certain moment we got a question from a documentary festival that wrote us an email and said, yeah, we would like to screen this film in our festival. It's called, the Flemish title is Hertenkoorts, what is it? Buck fever is the English title. And buck fever is what happens when you point a gun at some animal and at a certain moment you feel an anxiety and you don't know if you're able to pull the trigger. And this film is shot in Texas, and it's following a girl in her first hunting experience. And of course, for all of us, it's totally shocking to see, let's call it like the bare picture, the naked picture of a child carrying a gun. And it's shocking for a European audience, and it's less shocking apparently for an American audience. And of course, we were criticized for supporting this film because it's about a girl who might, I'm not going to tell you if she shoots or not, but at least it's about kids talking about shooting guns and about the anxiety, but also about the excitement and about how relevant, what an important step it is in your life, the day that you go for the first time hunting with your father. And the fact that it was a girl made it even more special. And the father and daughter, we follow them and they describe all the time, this is such a meaningful moment in my life. So it's a reality that stands very, very far away from our reality and the reality from our European children, I guess. But it felt, first of all, it felt meaningful to show it. And second, it also felt really meaningful because it launched this debate. On the one side, the film about the morning camp, how much misery and pain can we see on screen when it comes to children mourning about over a beloved one? But on the other end, can we watch a girl firing a gun and talking about the excitement of firing a gun? And I thought it was fantastic that these directors dared to follow this kid. And I can tell you with a little bit of a spoiler alert, that in the end, it turns out even more exciting because she feels this buck fever, she don't pull the trigger, and she has a discussion with her father who is very much understanding about her anxiety. And he tells her immediately, put away the gun, you'll do it if the moment is there. And what for me was even more interesting is that the director afterwards told me, yes, but this is also the film. This film is also about the right of a young girl, a 12-year-old girl, to say no when she is in a situation where she could do something that she doesn't feel ready for. It's much larger than firing a gun. It's about life in general. You, as a young girl, as a child, you always have the right to say no. And they express it through a quite provoking metaphor. At least for us, it's quite provoking, of kids firing a firearm. So this is the two extremities of working with documentaries, and I like both of them a lot. And to come back to my point, if there's one goal for me in working with documentaries, it's launching a dialogue, or in the best possible world, even a form of public debate. And this is what was achieved very modestly with this film. So I was very grateful for that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Gert, for choosing the 2 photos and sharing with us your experience with it. Talking on a small girl, I started my day today with Beppie from Johan van Koyten, a film from a Netherlands, Dutch filmmaker from the 60s. And I did that because Sabine, you shared also a photo for this panel with us. And Sophie, would you like to share the photo, please? Thank you so much. So Sabine, this is what you selected. Would you like to let us know why?
Johan van der Koken is a really important film director who is part of our film catalog, distribution catalog. And Beppie is a short film that we managed to put in a short film program, in an education program that went to school, national school programs. So there was more than 25,000 children that discovered this film, also as 2 other short films that we put together around the topic of called portrait, to portray some characters. And I really like this one, Beppie, because it's a cheeky little girl that is walking around Amsterdam, and we discover her in her life with her friends and sisters and fathers. And she's taking Johan van der Koken everywhere. And it's really a big pleasure both for children and adults to discover this short film.
She has an unbelievable energy, I would say. I was very impressed by her energy in a way. And for me, Beppie also proves something we do a lot here at the DFF, that film heritage is so interesting for a young audience to discover. And if it's really a beautiful film, and it's not a problem if it's 60 years old or even older. It's as interesting as in the 60s, and maybe even more, because things look different. So we, for example, we just selected a documentary about the Frankfurt station. It's more like an essay documentary, and for 3 to 6 year old kids in kindergarten, and I can only say they love it. So I would also say, let's be brave. Don't censor what children want to see too fast in a way in film education. And there is a question. You, Anna Koch. Maybe Anna, you would like to talk to us, or should I? No, please, Anna. We cannot hear you. Hello.
Hi, I'm not
Hello.
really camera ready, but sure, I can talk to
Don't worry.
I'm a filmmaker myself, and I'm also a documentary filmmaker, and I have been shooting 2 documentaries for young audiences. And I'm still wondering, what are the special requirements for a kids documentary that works? Because it's not simply having kid protagonists. But there's something specific that is really hard to grasp for me. And I was wondering if we could talk about what makes a documentary successful for kids and young audiences. What has to click for them?
For sure, I have my own opinion, but I give it to my panel. Somebody wants to answer? Isabel, what do you think?
it's quite a difficult question in this case, because I don't know, but I think that it's important to take into account the empathy in a way, to make them feel that, you know, that they feel themselves identified in a way, somehow, that you are, you know, that you are explaining something that deals with their lives. Because as Gert said, sometimes in some point, we are very used to working like from the adult point of view, you know, and seeing, but we don't get them, we don't try to track them to what, and try to learn what their life is and what their point of view of life is. And I think that's very interesting, you know, to get to know how they see life and to make them feel part of a story. And in a way, creators of a story, you know, create their own stories. I don't know if that answered a little bit.
Yes, thank you. I know it's a very hard question. It's just something that is really keeping my mind busy, because I feel like there's a thin line between trying to get the dramaturgic requirements of a movie to make it interesting for kids, but at the same time being very truthful about the hard facts of reality, or maybe the melancholy sometimes that protagonists and also kids are having, or tragic surroundings of a 5-year-old. Can a 5-year-old from Germany watch this? Like, it's difficult sometimes when it comes to documentaries that are not on a Ferris wheel.
I think here we can maybe go back to the question that Tina brought up on the table very provocatively earlier today, which was, why should we call it a kids documentary? Well, my experience so far is that a good documentary is a good documentary is a good documentary, and there's no reason why you should change the language because you're working for a young audience. But what I think that there's like, on the balance, there's two extremities. At one end, there is the element of recognizing the situation, which is identifying. This is something that could happen to me. This is something that like many documentaries that tell about kids with hobbies or passions or whatever. And then there's, on the other end of the balance, there is the element of triggering them, challenging them, surprising them. For instance, with the film about a girl that shoots a gun, which is something that they will never do. So it's the combination of identify yourself with someone, share the emotions, but at the same time, trigger me, surprise me, challenge me. And this is definitely nothing new that I will tell you, but because as we said, it's a cliche, but please dare to challenge your audience. Your audience is ready to take a lot, and you can challenge them as much as you want to, as long as you ask yourself the right questions, I think. And then you'll come up with a film that is a good documentary, that is a good documentary, that is a good documentary. And then we'll...
Thank you so much, Gert. I think this is Judith. You want to answer as well?
Yes, maybe I would like to add. I can't really say much about children, because I don't really work with children, but mostly with 16-year-olds and up. But for those groups, what I found really striking is that there's really no such thing as a young audience, but their tastes are so diversified that I mean, there are some films that work for a whole group and that are consensus. The Island of the Hungry Ghost was one of those examples where everyone agreed this is beautiful and important at the same time, and we choose it. But then there's films that most of the group can't relate to, and one person is really passionate about. And we've had people in the group who say at the start, I like films in which nothing happens for a long time. Those people exist, and sometimes they find our program. And you know, it's and then there's of course special interests like everybody has. that they can relate to and you wouldn't expect it. So yeah, just coming back to it's a really tough question, but maybe it's also, yeah, it's the question is too big in a sense that the film doesn't need to work for everyone in that audience.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Judith. Anna, is that okay, or do you
Sure,
want to follow up on it?
I was just wondering, listening to you, what maybe everyone was thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because it's a question that always pops up with producers, or especially with distributors. How do we get an audience into the cinema when there's Yakari or something very colorful and happy and joyous, and then at the other hand you have the social drama of kids somewhere in a random part of the world, and then who's getting the ticket, you know?
Yes.
So that's just a prominent question in my head.
Yeah. Okay. So Sabine, you wrote to me when I asked what documentary needs. You said we need film education because otherwise maybe people will not discover documentaries, as far as I remember. Would you like to add a bit to this topic? As from the point of view of a distributor and lobbyist, so to say, for documentaries?
Yes, I think lots of people are afraid of documentary. If they don't know what it is about, they just think they are going to be bored, and maybe they will if they are used to very narrative films or to TV programs that are just great to have fun and just forget about your hard day you just had. But for children, I think it's really important to talk to them and with them before they discover the films. And about the short film program I was talking about, it was really great for us that so many children in France discovered these 3 films, but also I think it's one of the film program that has been less viewed by children, because most of the teachers rather choose a fiction film from someone they know, like Chaplin or Jack Tati, which is really great and I love it, but they are afraid, I think, of showing these short films, and sometimes they say children doesn't know what documentary is. They ignore we can make films about real characters.
Yeah, I really think we cinephiles, we need brave teachers as allies. This is something I would put very on the top of my wish list, so to say. And maybe this could be our last round, but unfortunately the time is really flying. If we have the possibility, you know, to have 3 wishes, what to change in the way we work with documentaries and the young audience, in case you just imagine, you know, cultural politicians on European, national, regional level, whatever, are listening to us. You have 3 wishes and then things would change. Just very briefly, maybe we go through the round. Sabine, maybe you are already here. What would you wish for?
Yeah. I think I would wish that they go in theaters first, because it's really a different experience. Although there are really great platforms, internet platforms that are doing really good job for children, but I think the best way they can love documentary is to discover it on big screen with other children and talk about it and see the the character that is another child or a grown-up, but bigger than them on this big screen.
Okay, big screen for Sabine. Judith, what's your wish?
Well, I agree, of course, but maybe coming back, I'm still thinking about this point Anna mentioned in her second contribution about which person buys which ticket, and this conflict between entertainment or relaxation and having like a more difficult to grasp topic, and or a different difficult format. And I think when you ask me what I wish for really spaces and time slots in society that allow for these experiences, that are not just also for not only for young people but also for older people, times to reflect, to introspect, to discuss, and not just recover from a hard working day, you know.
Okay, spaces for Sabine and Judith, and slots for Judith. So Isabel, your turn.
I'll absolutely agree with both of you. And I was just thinking about saying, let's open windows. I don't know how, but let's open windows. Children need to see what they because once they see them, we will be able to take them to the theaters, and we will be able, but they need to get to know what documentaries are, and then it's such a variety and such a huge amount of, you know, of different types and formats and whatever. So that's let's open windows.
Open windows for Isabel. And Gert, what's your wish?
Thank you, Tini. Since you're such a nice fairy, I think you'll grant me 2 wishes. One is a better access to a new audience, shifting our attention from the white middle class audience that we see in every European festival towards target groups that do not find their way into the cinema so easily. And I see it happening every year in the Docs Festival in Duisburg. I know it can be done. There's always classes walking into the cinema where I think, oh my God, this is gonna be a disaster. They're gonna shout all the time, and they're not. Through the way the dialogue with the audience is established, we always end up there with wonderful and respectful screenings. And the second wish, maybe we should, somebody said, yeah, they might be afraid to watch documentaries. If that's so, then we should find another word for the concept of documentary. Maybe we should find a new, because I think with the new media situation, kids are documenting their own life all the time. So the threshold should be lower and lower. They should be pretty used right now to the idea of documenting your own life. They do it all day long. So if we just can tell them how to do it in a better way, or in a more artistic way, or in a more general way, then the step from what they do on social media towards documentary might even, we're always very pessimistic about social media, but maybe this is something that we could use to make the step smaller between documenting your own life and making a documentary.
So a very lively and diverse audience for Gert, and also maybe the hope for social media and new media. It's already 1 minute past 3. So Judith, Isabel, Sabine, and Gert, many thanks that you joined today our panel. I really appreciated it. And let's work all together to give a young audience the chance to discover great docs and to fall deeply into love with them. And of course, let me recommend the next panel. If you can't get enough, 3:30, my dear colleague Helene Gerritsen we'll have another panel, of course, on documentaries. And thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a nice week.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.